this is a sword that's been half pulled out of its sheath. It's an indication of the Prime Minister that if he chooses not to step aside, if he does not, as many people expect, announce that he will be departing the office of Prime Minister on Monday or Tuesday, then there will be a meeting on Wednesday. It will include his entire caucus, and it will almost certainly include an ultimatum for him to leave.
In what is supposed to be the quietest time of the political year, the silence from Justin Trudeau is deafening. Trudeau seems to be trying the same play that he's used in every major political scandal in his career. Take a vacation and just hope it goes away. However, this time it's not going away because of one main difference. It's his own party that's had enough.
Let's take a look. So, amid all of the craziness that's going on, Mark Carney calls dozens of Liberal MPs as he considers leadership bid. The former Bank of Canada governor is now seriously thinking about running for the Liberal leadership if Justin Trudeau resigns, a source close to him says.
Ottawa. Former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney is seriously thinking about running for the Liberal leadership if Justin Trudeau resigns, a source close to him says, as the government grapples with uncertainty over the Prime Minister's future in the face of the threat of American tariffs and a snap federal election. A source with direct knowledge of Carney's thinking told The Star on Friday that the former central banker in Canada and the United Kingdom has been taking and placing calls with dozens of Liberal MPs and political organizers in the days since Chrystia Freeland's shock resignation as finance minister rocked the Liberal government and preceded the greatest wave of calls so far for Trudeau to leave. The source, who spoke on condition of anonymity, said Carney is now actively mulling a run for the leadership if Trudeau steps down after reconsidering his future over the holidays. The confirmation of Carney's position on a potential leadership run comes after the Star reported that Freeland is also speaking with Liberal MPs, with two sources with knowledge of her thinking stating they understand that she also might stage a bid if Trudeau decides to leave. Other possible candidates include former British Columbia Premier Christy Clark, who one source with direct knowledge of her thinking said could be ready with a team and a theory to win if a contest is held. Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly, meanwhile, was undecided this week about a possible run, according to one source with direct knowledge of her position. Some MPs have also said they would like to see Dominic LeBlanc, the veteran politician appointed finance minister after Freeland's resignation, vie for the leadership if it opens up.
So isn't this interesting, folks? You have Mark Carney allegedly agreeing to accept the Minister of Finance job, and then Trudeau turns around, tells Freeland that she's going to be fired after she gives the economic statement, and then Freeland flips him the bird and then drops a nuke on the Liberal Party on Monday morning, right before the economic statement is supposed to be read. That blows everything up. Mark Carney says, no, thank you. You can have all of that drama yourself, Justin Trudeau. Everything blows up, and Trudeau goes essentially into exile for a couple of weeks on his vacation tour over in BC, and then Mark Carney turns around and says, you know what, maybe I will run for leader. Thank you very much, Justin Trudeau.
Yeah, that's the part that I don't understand. If I was Mark Carney, I wouldn't want anything to do with this mess. As I said in a previous episode, I think Carney would be smart if he just let somebody else have the leadership for now, and then he can take over when that person is done, because this next person is going to get a lot of the flack. They're going to be tasked with rebuilding this party that Justin has completely destroyed. It's not going to be a fun job, and they're not going to be seen as this great leader. Why would you want to step into this mess, especially coming from the outside or almost the outside, when your hands aren't sullied yet?
Well, what just baffles me is allegedly people are saying that Mark Carney is really intelligent. Now, I'm wondering if they're mistaking intelligent for being smart, because I know a lot of smart people that are the dumbest people that I've ever met in my entire life. So what do I mean by that? It means they can recite anything from any book that they've ever read, and they're great at taking tests, but when it comes to actually, applying and thinking and, navigating and using those facts to their advantage, they completely fall flat.
Yeah, it's book smart, it's not practical application.
Right. So you have Carney coming in. Now, he had a chance. He had a chance when there was this mystique of, this guy who's the former Bank of Canada governor, former, Bank of UK governor, and that was it. However, the moment he accepted to be this finance position in the Liberal Party, effectively reporting to Justin Trudeau last fall, that's where his mistakes began. So he started to directly attach himself to the Liberal brand. And then it was reported that he was going to accept the position of finance minister, meaning, and this is where Pierre Poilievre was talking a lot about this in his interview with Jordan Peterson, he's directly attached himself to all of the policies and platform with Justin Trudeau because that meant he was okay with it. He was okay with everything that was going on in the Liberal government at this time and all of the policies that have actually been implemented.
It's true, but I say that he's almost coming from the outside because a lot of people don't know that Carney is working for the Liberal Party as a financial advisor for the government, which I don't know if this has ever been done before, number one. But, we don't see him every day in question period. He's kind of out of sight, out of mind. So I think for him to wait an election cycle and then try to take over leadership, that will kind of make it seem like he had nothing to do with the Liberal Party and then come in, even though we all know that he really did. But because he's not in our face every day in question period, he's not part of the cabinet, he's not part of the caucus, people don't see him, people aren't necessarily associating him with the Liberal brand.
Oh, 100%. He should wait. Like he does have a chance of doing something if he waits now. But the catch is he has to completely shut up and disengage. That's what he has to do. He literally has to do nothing over the next term while Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives serve their first term. That's the only chance that he really has, because the other problem he has is all of these MPs that ran under Trudeau voted for all of Trudeau's policies. He needs a clean slate. So he needs to watch this party go down in flames and end up with the minimal seats that they're going to get, and then go into the next convention, then vie for the leadership. Then he can decide who's going to be running in the next viable general election, wipe the slate clean with all of Trudeau's former MPs. Then he can say, see, we're getting away from all of that far left stuff. I'm bringing us back to center. And then he can start building up the Liberal brand again. And then, we'll see how he faces off against Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives during that point. But that's the ticker. But the interesting thing is right now, Freeland is polling higher than Mark Carney to be Liberal leader. And wouldn't that be hilarious? Because if she took over as Liberal leader, well, they're going to go down in flames that are going to be just as high as when Justin Trudeau led the party. But let's take a quick look at some of the polls that have been going on since Freeland stepped down. And remember, this is from Liberal-leaning Nick Nanos.
We're going to talk Liberal Party and the ballot support for them.
Yep.
Or do we want to?
It's just one of those things where it's pretty clear that the Liberals and Justin Trudeau are both on the ropes. The thing is that in the weekly tracking, we look at the national numbers all the time, but with the Conservatives at 47 and the Liberals at 21. What we have to remember, Roger, is that when we look across the country in all the different regions, the Conservatives have more than 50% support in every single part of the country except Quebec, right? Mm-hmm. And that is a massive advantage for the Conservatives. And even in the province of Quebec, they're basically tied for second with the Liberals behind the Bloc Québécois. So, you look at this significant lead nationally. If we take Quebec out of the equation, the Conservative advantage is even more massive. And it speaks to the pressure that Justin Trudeau is under right now to resign, and also the worry that many Liberals have that they could just get crushed in the next federal election.
More than 50% in basically every other province but Quebec.
That's insane.
I don't remember numbers being like that. Like,
No, and they're now tying for second in Quebec when the Conservatives historically have been the fourth party.
Yeah, distant third or fourth. Yeah, behind the NDP. Yeah. So, and this is the amazing thing. So Nanos has the Conservatives at 47% nationally, and that's being dragged down by Quebec.
Yeah.
So
that's insane. I mean, Canadians are fed up, and Canadians are saying, you know what? That the platform that the Conservatives have released so far, because remember, they have not released their full platform. It's not election time yet. But what they have told us, that's what I want. That's what I want for my country.
Right. And, forget the blue wave, everybody. These polls are indicating a blue tsunami. Like this is not going to be small. So the other interesting thing that is happening is the Liberals are seeing this, and they are in full out panic mode. So there's some interesting things going on behind the scenes that we're actually going to share with you now.
What can we expect from this national caucus meeting for the Liberals?
Well, this isn't a meeting. This is a threat.
Okay, so there we go. What the Liberals have done is they've actually called a national caucus meeting. Now, remember, the last time they did this was after the Toronto-St. Paul's by-election, and they didn't get their national caucus meeting.
So now they're getting it.
This time, and Brenda Shanahan, who's essentially the one in charge of arranging this, she's already said that she's resigning, if you recall, so she didn't care. So you have virtually all of the major epicenters for Liberal representation saying they want one. Now, they have Ontario, they have Quebec, and they have the Atlantic caucuses that have all essentially said, Trudeau, you must resign. Of the 153, I believe, Liberal MPs that are remaining in Parliament, that accounts for 131 of that number.
So about 80%.
Yeah.
If my mental math is correct. Which it often isn't, but...
So they want a national caucus meeting. So why would they all of a sudden want one next week? So in Scott Reed's opinion, that's a threat.
This is a sword that's been half pulled out of its sheath. It's an indication of the Prime Minister that if he chooses not to step aside, if he does not, as many people expect, announce that he will be departing the office of Prime Minister on Monday or Tuesday, then there will be a meeting on Wednesday. It will include his entire caucus, and it will almost certainly include an ultimatum for him to leave, possibly a secret ballot, giving a very discernible, very graphic expression of the lack of confidence from his own government members. I think it's an insurance policy where the MPs are saying, if you don't make the decision, we will take control of the situation for ourselves.
But what can they do if he chooses to ignore all the signs that are telling him to resign?
Well, there's no provision for the Navy to literally get rid of a captain. But if the entire crew mutinies, if the entire crew says, Captain, we will not follow you, then it's difficult to move that vessel along. I think that's the situation we're at now. I think the expectation of caucus members, certainly those I've spoken with over the holidays, is that the Prime Minister will announce his departure, probably Monday, Tuesday. But that if he doesn't, then they will tell him in no uncertain terms that he must leave. Do they have a formal mechanism to do so under the constitution of the party or under the governing rules of caucus? No. But what leader can continue on if his entire caucus, if his whole flock says, we will no longer follow?
Now, if that happens, if we do see the resignation, what kind of damage has this internal friction done for the Liberals? Can they bounce back, or is this next election a loss for them?
Well, you never say it's a foregone conclusion, but I'll say this period of 2 weeks where arguably the Prime Minister thought to himself, all right, I guess I'm probably going to have to depart, but you know what, I'll take the holidays. It's a time when people aren't talking and thinking about politics anyway. I'll just relax, take a breather, and then do it under my own terms. If that was his logic, it has still come at a consequence for the party. We've seen polling that's shown the party has continued to lose support during this period of inaction. And I think, it's therefore caused some real damage to the party's re-elections hopes. The big debate will be, how do they pick a new leader and how soon will that leader be in place? One of the new challenges, if you imagine past Justin Trudeau for the party, is, are they really going to take 45, 60, 90 days to select a leader, have that person installed in place while Justin Trudeau remains leader, prime minister, and face of the government party, and then slot this person in with 10 minutes before a non-confidence vote, no opportunity to establish a connection with Canadians, go immediately to the polls. That does sound like a recipe for slaughter.
I find it extremely curious that this caucus meeting is being held on Wednesday when the Conservatives are going to try to put forward a motion to recommend a non-confidence motion in committee on Tuesday.
Yeah, this seems to be a strategic attempt by, call it now, the overwhelming rebel caucus that is essentially the entire let's just say the entire caucus outside of cabinet. And they've lined it up such as this. So you have the Conservatives firing that first shot at Trudeau on Tuesday at the Public Accounts Committee, which we will be covering, by the way, live as it happens. It starts at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, so we will be covering that as it happens. So make sure you watch it for our live stream that's going to drop on Tuesday morning for that. And that's going to get debated. Who knows what's going to happen there? All indications are that even though the NDP has said, well, we don't know if this is actually going to work, we're going to support it, probably because they don't know if it's going to work or not. And they're really going to see what's going to happen. Now, the Liberals at that meeting are going to be caught between a rock and a hard place. How do you fight against that if you are part of these caucuses that have been calling for Trudeau's resignation?
Right. It's going to be very curious to see what happens on Tuesday if the Liberals will join with the Conservatives and the other opposition parties to support this motion going to the House.
So that's going to be interesting. And after all of that, which will no doubt be publicized in the media in terms of what happened at that committee, you then have the Wednesday, which is basically your entire team waiting for you with their arms crossed as you walk in. Now, what did Trudeau do? Just not go to the National Caucus meeting? That wouldn't be a good idea, because then you're going to no doubt have a whole bunch of Liberal MPs, and I mean a lot of them, start appearing on mainstream media, publicly embarrassing Justin Trudeau, trying to force him to resign. And that's not going to work well for a guy with a huge ego either.
No, not at all.
So this is what he's walking into. So yeah, it's very interesting, the timing that the Liberal caucus has actually picked to put this in place. And allegedly they're expecting Justin Trudeau to announce his resignation on Monday and Tuesday. Now remember that bizarre move, that video we put out the other day saying that they're going to extend the 2024 charity tax deadline. Well,
you can't do that if you're not in office.
well, and what are they going to do? Have a leadership race while government is susceptible to fall at a no confidence vote? They're going to have to prorogue, which means that's not going to happen.
Right. So why are you making these promises if you have no intention of doing it? That's why this is one of the things that I think that Justin Trudeau has no intention of stepping down. I mean, his entire party can mutiny, but unless they vote non-confidence against him, there's really nothing that they can do.
And there are some people who are ready to go to that slaughter by the sounds of it. Mark Carney now, we're hearing reports that he may have been making some calls.
Roger, they are all calling. Dude, the phone bills are going up, okay? And so you've got Christian Freeland calling around. You've got Mark Carney expressing interest, trying to put in place an organization. Lots and lots and lots of names. And, you know, there's the big struggle is this. The real question is, will the party have a sort of normal leadership race, notwithstanding the gun that is to their head in terms of parliamentary procedure and the threat of a non-confidence vote? Will they attempt to take 3 months to put in place a new leader, leaving that person with no time? Or will they opt instead for something that's short-circuited, shortcut, and get somebody else in place earlier? That's going to be a real battle. And to some degree, it's going to pit some of the candidates against one another, because how you pick a leader determines in great part who that leader will be. It's a big fight that's been going on behind the scenes over the course of the holidays. And if the Prime Minister steps down on Monday or Tuesday, that fight will break out into the open.
That's interesting. We've looked at polls, I think it was in maybe October, where Carney was beating Freeland, and now Freeland's on top.
Yeah, so what we've seen is in January of 2024, Carney was a little behind or a little ahead of Freeland. I think he was at 19%. Freeland was at 18%. And then October, that margin had shifted a little bit. Carney was still ahead, as Tanya said. And now Carney is down to 11%, probably because some of the Liberal Party members are like, look at the leadership Chrystia Freeland showed when she stood up to Justin Trudeau.
Right, I think it's like girl power,
Yeah. So congratulations, you have 19% of the vote, which means everybody that the overwhelming majority of Liberal Party members are choosing none of the above, in that there is nobody that is currently in front of them that they think is the person to actually lead the Liberal Party. So that's going to be the challenge that they have. And to Scott Reed's point, if the Liberals actually do say this, like let's say Trudeau resigns and they do this leadership race, you're going to have mudslinging between these people.
Oh, yeah. In
the public trying to say, I'm the best leader, I'm the best leader, and I'm the best leader, all while the party's going down in flames. And so that's going to bring down support of the Liberal Party, no doubt, because the narrative from the Bloc, the Conservatives, and the NDP will be, look what's happening, Trump just took over, all of this is happening, and they're busy
fighting amongst themselves.
Right, dealing with internal drama.
Yeah.
And there's also some argument, I don't know how realistic it is, that Mary Simon may turn around and say, I'm not proroguing Parliament for a leadership campaign, especially during the time that Donald Trump has come in. Because remember, if Justin Trudeau resigns, there's no loyalty remaining there between Mary Simon and Justin Trudeau.
No, and there's also no deputy prime minister to take over in the interim.
Right. So it would be catastrophic for that to actually happen.
Well, and that's another reason why I think Justin Trudeau is not stepping down, because he hasn't appointed a deputy. If he did, it would be very easy for the party to say, okay, well, you're out and the deputy's going to be in charge. Actually, I shouldn't say very easy, because again, they don't have it in their convention to kick out a leader, but I think maybe it would be easier to make the argument that the deputy should take charge. Whether or not they'd be successful is a different story, because again, they'd lack that convention to actually remove a leader from leadership and fall back to the deputy.
Here's one other possibility as to why Justin Trudeau didn't appoint a deputy leader. One other possibility is that he figured he was going to end up resigning, but wants to do so gracefully, so he would just remain the interim leader until a new leader is picked. So he may say, I'm going to resign as soon as a new leader is picked.
That's a good point I hadn't considered.
So that's a possibility, and I hadn't considered it prior to all of this crap happening today either. So, but we're just reacting to things as they happen. Now, the other thing to consider here is that we've had a lot of comments and a lot of emails essentially saying, well, none of this matters. Justin Trudeau is still going to remain in power because he's just going to call the Emergencies Act and declare war, and there won't be an election, and he'll remain as dictator. So we would like to completely put those concerns to rest, and anyone that is telling you this doesn't understand parliamentary procedure and what the powers of the Prime Minister actually are. So in order to actually demonstrate that, let's take a look at the Emergencies Act. Ladies and gentlemen, the Emergencies Act, the same one that was used to impose the government's will on the trucker convoy in February of 2022. An act to authorize the taking of special temporary measures to ensure safety and security during national emergencies, and to amend other acts in consequence thereof. So the Emergencies Act can only be enabled through an act of Parliament. And it can only be enabled through an act of Parliament if it satisfies the criteria that there is a threat to the country. There is no threat to the country. And even if there was,
I think you'd be hard pressed for those caucus members, the rebel caucus now, because remember what we said, about 80% of that caucus is working against Justin Trudeau. I think you would be hard pressed to find them voting in favor of an Emergencies Act just to prolong Justin Trudeau's reign.
Right, yeah, right after all of them have written letters to Justin Trudeau and published them publicly saying, we want you out. So it's not going to make sense that they're all going to suddenly vote to keep the guy in charge that they all want out, because they're going to have to wear that. So that's one scenario. Now, this is the next piece of the Emergencies Act that is relevant here. In order to invoke it, this is Section 7. A declaration of a public welfare emergency is effective on the day on which it is issued, but a motion for confirmation of the declaration shall be laid before each House of Parliament and be considered in accordance with Section 58. What is Section 58, folks? This is Section 58, actually considering the Emergencies Act in the first place. Subject to subsection 4, a motion for confirmation of a declaration of emergency signed by a minister of the Crown, together with an explanation of the reasons for issuing the declaration and a report on any consultation with the lieutenant governors and council of the provinces with respect to the declaration, shall be laid before each House of Parliament within 7 sitting days after the declaration is issued. So, what does this mean? This means that a minister of Trudeau's cabinet has to stand up in the House of Commons and put forth a motion that needs to be voted on in order to actually declare an emergency. You're back to the same issue. You're in the House of Commons and you have to have a majority in the House to actually say, yes, this is an emergency, which means you need all of these Liberals that want Trudeau out to vote for it. You need the NDP, who is now saying, we don't want any of this. You need
either the Bloc or the Conservatives or some of them.
Yeah.
You need a majority to vote for this. This is the only reason it passed in 2022, is that a majority voted for it.
And for Justin Trudeau to just call this for no reason, that's not going to happen, folks. It is absolutely not going to happen. Now, even if it did happen, guess what? Parliament can revoke it any time that they want. So anyone in Parliament can actually put forth a motion to actually revoke the Emergencies Act. They vote on it, and then it's gone.
Now, another variation that we've heard of this rumor is that Justin Trudeau is going to prorogue Parliament for up to a year, and then after a year, they'll sit for Parliament, as they are obligated to once a year under our Constitution, and then they will prorogue it again and just repeat it in perpetuity until, I don't know, Justin Trudeau is old and gray and still remains Prime Minister. Now, the reason that this is inaccurate is because at the end of prorogation, you must do a throne speech, which is an automatic confidence vote. So after proroguing Parliament for a year, Canadians don't like that. Parliament doesn't like that. I can imagine already the first time that the rest of the House will be voting non-confidence in the Prime Minister who's prorogued Parliament for a year for no reason. If he were to try to do it again, they would definitely vote non-confidence. You cannot continue this because every time you come back from prorogation, you have to have a confidence vote in the form of a speech from the throne. Also, a set election date overrides prorogation. So this is just an example. This is not happening, but if Trudeau were to prorogue Parliament right now for a year until next January, well, we have a scheduled election coming in October of this year, 2025, so that would automatically override prorogation.
Right, and we've also heard people say, oh, well, he can just change the election date. No, he cannot, because that would require an act of Parliament.
Right. They currently have a bill in Parliament, I believe it's Bill C-65, that they're trying to change the election date by putting it off for 1 week. And that's been unsuccessful thus far. Now, in the same vein as not going to election and putting it off indefinitely, there's only ever been one time in Canada's history where the election was put off, and that was in 1916. Not only was the world facing the Great War, the First World War, the worst war possibly that the world had seen up until that point, Parliament also burned to the ground in February of that year. There was no House of Commons. The only thing in the center block that was saved was the library. And Canada actually had to write to the King, who was King George V, and they sent forward the British North America Act of 1916, requesting that Parliament be extended by 1 extra year. The Act says that the extension of duration of 12th Parliament of Canada, notwithstanding anything in the British North America Act 1867, or in any act amending the same, or any order in council or terms and conditions of union made or approved under the said act or under any act of the Canadian Parliament, the term of the 12th Parliament of Canada is hereby extended until the 7th day of October 1917. So that was requesting that the session of Parliament, the 12th Parliament, be extended by 1 year, meaning that the election was put off by 1 year because not only was the Great War going on, but also we had no parliament.
So this brings us to the last, rumor out there that is completely false, which is, well, Trudeau is just going to declare war and join the war with Ukraine, and then that will, give him the ability to stop an election. No, it will not, because in order for Canada to declare war, that requires, everybody say it with me, an act of parliament.
Right.
So you have to have all of parliament vote on that. Our prime minister cannot just unilaterally do things like the way that other countries can. You have to have an act of parliament. So there's no way for Trudeau to literally do anything to stay in power past an election. He can't change the election date on his own. He can't declare war on his own, and he can't declare the Emergencies Act on his own. And he has, even if he wanted to, he needs the help of a party that doesn't want him anymore. So I hope this puts to bed all of these false stories out there that are only designed to scare the crap out of everybody and to keep you hyped up and to keep you watching, because it's not going to happen. So we're not even saying this with 99% or 99.9. We are 100% confident that there's going to be an election this year. The worst case scenario is that an election is going to happen in October. But given how things are going, I'm pretty sure even the Liberal Party doesn't want to wait until October at this point, because it would make their electoral fortunes that much worse. So this is where we're at today, folks. The question is Justin Trudeau going to resign before, or is he going to be forced to resign after this Wednesday National Caucus meeting? So that's it for us. We'll keep watching, but stay tuned for the Public Accounts Committee live stream that is going to happen on 11 a.m. Eastern Time on January 7th. And lastly, make sure you sign the petition that we have. So it's E5289. That petition, along with this confidence motion, should it come to that, is going to be the perfect accessory for the Conservatives to come back from the break and say, we have a non-confidence proposal from the Public Accounts Committee, and we have a petition with hundreds of thousands of Canadians saying, we want an election and we want it now.